Life is filled with unique experiences that are shaped and blended by race, ethnicity, and culture. Influences from our family, friends, community, and society can veer us off track and, at times, leave us feeling stuck, lost, and alone. Fear can set in, which can lead to overwhelming anxiety and depression. These feelings are there so we can learn, grow, and break free from our past experiences and the current lens at which we view our inner and outer world. We cope and find relief from these feelings by using drugs, alcohol, self-injury, social media, work, food, shopping, gambling, sex, relationships, and other addictive behaviors that perpetuate these feelings and cause us to feel like we're spiraling out of control. A way we can break free from these addictive behaviors is by sharing our experiences, expressing ourselves, and supporting each other while overcoming fears of judgment. This thing called life is a supportive space where we can share experiences, strength, and hope with each other. I am your host, Daniel Flynn, and before I ask others to share their story, I will share my own. These next few episodes, I will share my experience overcoming addiction from drugs and alcohol, what led me to addiction, relapse, and recovery. This is my story, and this is this thing called life.
Let's just start at the very beginning. Can you tell me where you were born and also sort of what your parents were doing at the time?
Yeah, so I was born in Rochester, New York, upstate New York. At the time, my dad was working for, I think it was Xerox, and he was doing sales. My mom at the time, she was a stay-at-home mother, taking care of myself, but also my two older sisters. My oldest sister, she was born in California. My other sister, she was born in Connecticut. We moved around a bit, but yeah, things started out in Rochester, New York.
What are your earliest memories? Do you have memories of being really young?
So I would say my earliest memories were probably in New Jersey. So after we moved from Rochester to New Jersey, I would say my earliest memories are when I was in karate. I was about I'd say like preschool, kindergarten. I remember playing around at I think it was called Dogwood. That was the preschool I went to. I remember this one time I was messing around with one of my friends and we were kind of like shaking like soda cans and throwing them up in the air and like watching them explode. And we were just having the time of our lives. We just grabbed one can after another, shaking them, throwing them up. And my mom's friend, she comes outside and she's, what's going on? What are y'all doing? And she took us to the karate instructor. And I remember going, him and I going to the instructor and just being like super nervous, like, what's going to happen? What are you going to do? And, he was gentle, but it's basically, you can't be doing those things. You got to respect other people. So that was definitely one of my first memories, but one of I'm not sure how much I remember this, but one of the first memories that my mom brings up, I think about preschool, and we grew up Catholic. And so we went to one of these Stations of the Cross events, and the last part, Jesus is walking across with the cross on his back, and there's the scene with the thorns and blood and things like that. And she said that as Jesus was walking across, I just started to break down and cry. And it seemed like it was almost like inconsolable at the time. And I kind of remember that, but I would say those are the few first memories I have.
What memories do you have of your parents when you were a little kid? What impressions did they make on you when you were young?
So when I was younger, sort of like in New Jersey, but we moved to Florida, and that's sort of where I was started halfway through kindergarten and, kindergarten, first grade, and throughout, up until high school, I was in South Florida. And so, around that time, I remember my mom being very loving, very caring and understanding. I remember my dad, he sort of at the beginning, when I was a bit younger, my dad, he would spend time with me, and we would do a lot of fun things that not a lot of people get to do. He would take me on fishing trips. We went to a Florida Panthers game, and I got to ride the Zamboni and like, wave at all the fans. I got to sit on the sideline, like have floor seats at the Miami Heat basketball game. And I remember that time I got to go on like the jumbo screen while the national anthem was being played. And I just remember, I mean, how cool it was to see my face like up on the big screen. And so, yeah, there was a lot of, my dad would spend time with me, and we would do a lot of, father son things. But then I remember as I kind of got into middle school and high school, my dad was navigating, alcoholism and workaholic. And so things sort of started to change, I would say around middle school, going into high school.
When that started happening, did you understand what was happening?
I had no idea. I think I remember that, and my mom has mentioned this before, that my mom would try to protect us, because my dad would get upset, angry, and it was like walking on eggshells a lot of the time. We sort of had to be, careful what we said and how we said it. And, I remember one time, my mom sort of sat us down and told us that my dad was kind of going through something, and that we kind of had to all kind of stick together and be, a bit mindful of what we do. And basically, we had to be careful. And so I remember, I mean, seeing what was happening, but not really. I had no idea really what was happening or what was going on, or had a full understanding.
And what was your relationship like with your sisters?
Yeah, I've got three amazing sisters, Megan, Caitlin. Those are the two older sisters, and my youngest sister, Brianna. And growing up, was wonderful. I remember my sisters would try to put dresses on me, and they would put me and put makeup on me and like prance me around when I was little. I remember my little sister, and when we were younger, she was a cheerleader, and she would practice all of her cheers. And I remember like helping her with all of her cheers and cheering with her. I remember we were living in the same room at one point, and we would do like different patty cake games. And yeah, it was really great having three sisters. They showed me, how to be caring and understanding. And yeah, it's something that I really appreciate. I think at the time, I always wanted a brother, right? I always wanted to have an older brother that I could play football with and go do like guy stuff. But, looking back, it was the perfect experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was going to ask about the brother thing, since that's sort of a stereotype that,
Right.
yeah, if you just have sisters, you want a brother. But yeah, it seems like you were close to them. It wasn't like there was a weird separation just because you were brother and sister.
Yeah, I mean, I think like as, something that we all bonded over was we all played soccer growing up. My two older sisters, they both of them played competitive soccer, and as did I. And so that was something common. I know as we, started going through middle school and high school, the age difference kind of magnifies, being 16 and 12. I mean, those are very different age points. So, as we got older, we couldn't connect as well just because we were all going through, different things at different times. But my sisters were my two older sisters were in high school, and they would fight all the time. Someone would steal the other's clothes. Someone would steal, their makeup. Someone would go through their room, and there was some fights growing up. But it was still we were all like at the very we definitely had arguments and fights, but we were all very close.
I'm curious if you think about kind of your childhood and the years leading up to high school. I think a lot of people experience this thing where as you're growing up as a kid, you sort of assume that everybody else grows up just like you, and then you grow up and slowly realize that that's not true. I'm curious, like, are there certain things as you've gotten older that you've realized were unique about the way that you grew up when you were a kid and the experiences that you had?
Yeah, I mean, tons of things. I mean, and that was, such a wonderful question. I think, a few things come to my mind. I remember seeing other friends that their dad would be very affectionate and loving in the way that I wanted, because I know, my dad, for him, at this point in his life, his way of showing love was working hard and trying to give us, everything that we wanted, like being able to go on vacations, being able to go to a private high school, having all these things. And I mean, that was what, being a loving father meant for him. I would say it did come at a cost, but I remember seeing, yeah, other dads being like loving and affectionate the way I wanted. And I just remember that being like, being that strange, like, oh my God, this other thing exists. This other kind of relationship does exist. The other thing that I sort of have come to realize, especially I started to realize when I was about in college or grad school, is, what it means to grow up white and a white male, and all the privilege that growing up white comes with. Some of the stories that I'll share has to do with me navigating alcoholism and addiction, and some of my experiences. I would get pulled over by the police, and when I was in high school, I got pulled over and could have gotten arrested 4 or 5 times, and it never happened. And there's no doubt in my mind that, that was attributed to the privilege that I have as a white man in the United States. And but a part of it, was, and what I believe, sort of just this spirit guides or angels or God or the universe sort of looking out for me. I mean, so the first time it had happened, I was about 16 driving. I just had gotten my license, and that's when that's when I got the freedom, right? I got to go and do as I pleased and when I wanted to. And with that freedom, I got to do illegal things, right? And there was this excitement when I got to do, drink or use drugs. And so I remember one time we were coming back from a football game. I was driving in my dad's Expedition, and I had been drinking. We had beers in the car. I had 4 or 5 friends in my dad's blue Expedition, and I was speeding. I was probably going like 80 miles an hour or so, and I got pulled over. I'm there with all my friends, and I'm like, this is it. I'm done. Like I'm going away forever. It was nice knowing you. And the cop was like, listen, I'm gonna call your parents. They're gonna come pick you up. I don't want this to, you're young, I don't want this to kind of affect your life. And my dad and it was bad, but it was good, but it was bad, because it was good because I'm not right. I'm not going to jail. I'm not going to have a record, but bad because my dad's got to come pick me up. And so my dad picks us up, my dad and mom. My mom takes some of my female friends home, and my dad takes the guys home. And I was grounded for like 30 days. And something, I was grounded many times in high school. And one of the things that I would have to do to get ungrounded was I had to do like yard work. And I have done a lot of mulching, I will say. When I was in high school, I did a lot of planting. I remember like one of the times my dad had me uproot like a plant and move it like a foot to the right. And I was like, real, like, you're really gonna have me do this. But I mean, at the time I was like, I will do whatever you ask me to do so I can go hang out with my friends. But there was a time that when I was in high school, we were at again, this, happens at a football game. We were coming back from a football game, my friends and I was like maybe 17 at the time. We were at a red light, and well, my friend asked if anyone wants to drive his like big truck. It's like what are some of these trucks, like an F-150 lifted truck, and like he's asking who wants to drive it. And I'm like, I do, like 100%. I absolutely want to drive your truck. But I had been drinking, and all of my friends in the truck were, there was girls in the back, and they were drinking. They actually had like bottles with them in the trunk. And so we're at a light, the light turns green. I tried to bang a Yui really quick and to beat the oncoming traffic. The truck is lifted so high that I could not see the median, like the little curb median. So when I do try to bank the U-turn, I just completely go over the median. And the first car that's on the other side is a cop. On his speaker, he microphones to like go down one of the streets. I pull over again. I'm like, this is it. This is it. He waits there for like maybe a minute. He turns on his sirens, backs out, and speeds away. And he's gone. And it seems like he got a call that seemed more severe. And that happened to me again. This was a little bit later, but I was driving home from a party, and a cop had pulled me over, and he had me come in the car. He was already angry when he pulled me over, because he opened the door. He was like, get out of the car, sit down. He was dressed to the nines in this like SWAT gear. And so he has me sit down, goes back to his car. He comes back and he said, have your mom pick you up. I don't want to see you. He goes back to his car, turns on light, and speeds off. And it happened another time when I was in high school. I was driving, hanging out with a friend of mine, and I think I had taken Xanax before we had gone out, and I started to drink, and I just ended up like blacking out. And I don't remember a lot of the time, but I remember like all of a sudden I'm in the car with her, it stopped, and the cops are behind us. And I am just like, I am not fit to drive in any capacity. Like I am very much under the influence between the combination of Xanax and alcohol. And, it was unsafe, doesn't even begin to describe the situation that I not only put myself in, but I had put my friend in as well. So we're pulled over, the cop comes up to the window, and like, I mean, just taking a look at me, he was just like immediately knows like what's happening, what's going on. My friend sitting next to me, she starts chatting with the cop and trying to chat him up. They started to talk about how they both graduated, or no, they both went or going to FSU. And he said to my friend, he said, I want you to drive him home and like, have a safe night. And so she ended up dropping me off at my house that was like 20 or 30 minutes away. And there was just many times in my life that, I mean, on one hand, it was definitely privilege in the fact that, I'm a white male, but it was, there was something about it also that seemed like I couldn't, like I was going to eventually get in trouble, but not right now. Like I had to kind of continue on.
And so, were these experiences like affecting you each time? Because, I'm just hearing these stories, so like I'm just wondering, between each of these, as you go to the next one, are you changing your state of mind, or are you starting to think, oh, I need to stop doing this, or were you not changing?
I was not changing at all. Like my awareness was just not, just not there. Like the awareness of like what I was doing, the awareness of, how it was not only affecting me, but, affecting the people around me. It just wasn't there. And, it's part of the reason why I just would continue, right? If there's no consequences, just kind of continue going along. And, but it was also trying to hold on to, drugs and alcohol. I mean, drugs and alcohol, it's a negative, but it's a wonderful coping mechanism. It's social anxiety, but it's just like anxiety in general, and it can be a wonderful escape from life. And that was something I wanted to hold on to. And like as I started, we'll move on into, college and grad school, at times things would get more chaotic, but I would want to hold on even tighter each time, because, it's difficult to let go. It was difficult to let go of drugs and alcohol and how it made me feel, and drinking and using drugs definitely became sort of right a part of my identity, or who I was. Anything I did involved drinking, right? Going to bars or hanging out with people, like it was all surrounded by drinking and pre-gaming, and where are we going after a party. And it became such a part of my life, right? It wasn't just letting go of drugs and alcohol. It was like letting go of like a part of myself.
Do you think when you were doing this in high school that on some level you understood why you were doing it?
So I would say deep down, or I think there's like at the time I would say, especially when I started smoking weed, I really wanted to be accepted, by a group of people. I think that was part of it. I mean, I think it was, I wanted to be accepted by a group of friends, but at the same time, like I enjoyed getting high. So I just say, so it was perfect for me because I got to, not only have an escape, but I could kind of hang out with the people that also would use drugs and smoke weed. And so yeah, I think it was definitely, so I can be a part of a community, right? To be a
Mhm.
part of a small community, but I could, also get high and cope, kind of cope with navigating life as an adolescent, but also navigating life as an adolescent that, with a father at home that was a workaholic and an alcoholic, and also like I was attracted to excitement, right? And doing something illegal was exciting.
When you think back to this chunk of time in high school when this stuff started, how do you think about it now? I mean, there's people who go through stuff like this and, they think it was all good because I learned from it, and they look at sort of the positive side of it, and there's people who, might just purely regret it and just feel horrible thinking back to it. Like, where are you at on that spectrum?
Yeah, so it was, I mean, overall, okay, it's something I'm grateful for. Like I had to experience, I feel like I needed to experience this in life. There's a lot of value to overcoming and something like addiction and alcoholism. And yeah, I think the gratitude is kind of looking at both the negatives and the positives all at once. I mean, I have definitely put myself and other people in very dangerous situations, and that's something I've accepted. And but at the same time, I've accepting that, um, and accepting these negative things that I've done and these negative experiences has allowed me to grow and to change. Like I and I know we'll sort of chat about this a bit later, but I mean, I'm in a wonderful place in my life as far as how I view the world and how I view myself, and I would not be here if I didn't go through all that.
If you or someone you know would like to share their experience, strength, and hope overcoming addictive behaviors, you can contact us by visiting our website, thisthingcalledlife.center, where you can find resources on addiction and mindfulness. Thank you for listening and being with us in this thing we call life.